One day you're at the grocery store and you ask someone who works there to help you find something, and they seem not to know where anything is, and when they pick up the item, they pick up the wrong thing for you. So now, what do you probably think of this person? You might think that they're incompetent or that they're really anxious, but in reality, they're a part-time high school student and they're waiting on college admissions results, and that's all that's been on their mind the whole week. So if you thought that person was incompetent or generally an anxious person, then what you just did is called the fundamental attribution error. Basically, what that means is you believe that the actions of other people are a result of their personality or who they really are, and your own actions are because of situational factors that caused you to act that way, things that were out of your control. Basically, you tend to give yourself a break, but you hold others 100% accountable for what they do. We think personality traits are more powerful than situational factors. This leads us to make unfair judgments about people and downplay the reasons why they might be acting the way they are. So why does this happen? Because we lack situational theory. Basically, we don't understand the power of the situation in influencing how people act. Maybe you lack information. If you don't have information, then it makes sense for you to draw the wrong conclusions about why somebody's acting the way that they are. But people commit the fundamental attribution error, or FAE, even when they know and they're fully aware of what's going on. For example, a study was conducted by Edward Jones and Victor Harris. So university students had to read essays that either criticized or supported Fidel Castro, the leader of the Communist Party in Cuba, a while back. Some students were told that the writer had the choice to write for Castro or against him. Other students were told that the writer had no choice in supporting or writing against Castro in their essay. They had to write a specific prompt. So the authors of the study were surprised to find the results. Even when participants were told that the writer had no choice in writing the essay that they did, whether they supported Castro or not, the participants still thought that the writer's opinion was what they wrote in the essay. In other words, they were told the writer had no choice in writing supporting Castro or criticizing Castro. But the participant read the essay and thought that was what the writer really felt. Obviously, that couldn't have been true because the writer didn't have a choice. They had to write an essay that was either criticizing or supporting Castro. Studies show that this effect happens even when participants are given extra information about the writer or when they're warned not to show bias. Basically, the FAE happens because it takes effort to understand someone's situation and circumstances. Our brain has to do a lot of calculations and work throughout the day, so it tends to use the route that requires the least amount of energy. So our brain takes shortcuts, cognitive shortcuts, known as heuristics. But these shortcuts also put us at risk of committing cognitive biases like the fundamental attribution error, the FAE. When we mentally process someone's actions, we go through 3 steps. First, we categorize the action. What is this person doing? Next, we make a dispositional characteristic. In other words, what does this say about this person's personality? And finally, we apply a situational correction. Basically, you try to understand why or how the situation contributed to their actions. The first 2 steps are a lot more automatic than the 3rd step. The 3rd step requires us to put in deliberate effort and thinking, and that's often why it gets left out, especially in situations in which we don't have the mental energy, like when we're distracted by something else or we just don't have time for this activity. The FAE is affected by our mood. You might expect it to happen more often when you're in a bad mood, but in reality, it happens more often when we're in a good mood. In one study based on Jones and Harris's Castro experiment, participants read essays that were for or against nuclear testing, and they had to make judgments about what the writer's opinion was. But they added a twist. Before reading the actual essay, participants completed a verbal completion exercise. It was a test in which they finished sentences like car is to road as train is to. They ranged from easy to hard, and some of them didn't have a correct answer, like bread is to butter as river is to. To mess with participants' moods, the experimenter would tell the participant that they performed below average or above average on the sentence completion exam. After this, the participant read the essays. Some were told that the writer had no choice but to argue for nuclear testing or against it, and others were told that they did have a choice. The results: the happy participants were more likely to commit the fundamental attribution error only when they were told the writer had no choice and the writer wrote for an unpopular opinion. So in this case, the participants thought the writers, who had no choice but to argue for nuclear testing, actually were in favor of that. They actually thought nuclear testing was good. So why does this happen? It seems like being in a bad mood makes us more active and careful with our information processing, which makes us retain more information. We keep more. In fact, happy participants were able to remember less details about the essay that they read than those who were in a bad mood. So it seems like a good mood actually can impair your memory. Why does any of this matter? Because all of us have to make decisions based on why we think other people act the way that they do, and then we base our behavior based on that. When the FAE causes us to make incorrect judgments about other people's actions, it can actually hurt our relationships. When we characterize people as lazy or disorganized, in reality they might just have a lot on their plate. It can negatively affect what we think of them. On a societal level, it might lead us to blame people who commit crimes like theft and kind of ignore the circumstances that led them to commit that crime. Poverty, school to prison pipeline, lack of resources, police crackdowns, crooked cops. You can't blame the person entirely, necessarily. Things are more complicated. How do we avoid the fundamental attribution error? There's probably no 100% foolproof way of doing so, but the best we can do is try to take the other person's perspective, to put ourselves in their shoes and to think about the reasons why they might be acting the way that they are. We have to try to be open in our judgments and try to see the good qualities in people, and to not be so quick to assume things about other people and their personality, especially when we're in a good mood. And that's all for today. See you guys in the next one.